Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Answers Simplified. In this video, I will be sharing answers of Viva Class 8 Social Science History Chapter 2 The Establishment of Company Power. Let us discuss the long answer type questions. First question, write a note on Carnatic Wars. Answer, England and France's rivalry which dominated the European political scene spilled into their colonial possessions. 3 Anglo-French wars were fought between them in India. These are referred to as Carnatic Wars because most of the battles were fought in the Carnatic region, which is in present-day Tamil Nadu and parts of Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh. The First Carnatic War took place when the British and French were engaged in Austrian War of Succession in Europe. In India, the French, led by Governor General Joseph Dupleix, captured Madras, a British settlement, while the British attacked Pondicherry. The French gave Madras back to the British when the war in Europe ended with the signing of the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle. The Second Carnatic War broke out between the French and the English over the issue of succession to the thrones of Hyderabad and Carnatic. A war of succession broke out in both these states. The French and the English supported these rival groups. The French succeeded initially but were ultimately defeated, and the Treaty of Pondicherry was signed in 1754. According to the treaty, France had to return all the captured territories to England. The outbreak of the 7 Years' War in Europe led to the Third Carnatic War in India between the English and the French. The British captured the French post of the Chandangarh, now Chandannagar, and defeated the French army in the Battle of Vandivash in 1760. The war ended in 1763 with the signing of the Treaty of Paris. Question 2. Discuss the expansion of British rule in Bengal. Answer. Bengal was one of the richest provinces. The East India Company set up its factory in Bengal on the banks of the river Hooghly in 1651. By 1696, it started fortifying the settlement. In 1698, the East India Company acquired zamindari rights over 3 villages, Sutanuti, Gobindpur and Kalikata, which later developed into Calcutta or Kolkata as it is known today. The Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb issued a farman granting the East India Company the right to carry out duty-free trade in Bengal. This right was later formalized again by the Mughal ruler Firukh. This meant that the traders could import and export goods from Bengal without paying any taxes. Although this farman allowed only the company to practice the right, various company officials carried on illegal private trade of their own without paying duty. This resulted in a tremendous loss of revenue for the Bengal government. Question 3. Explain the various policies and doctrines adopted by the British for the expansion of rule and power. Answer. The policy of the subsidiary alliance was evolved by Lord Wellesley. According to this alliance, the rulers were to be protected by the company and had to maintain British forces within their kingdom at their own cost. If the ruler failed to make payments for the British army stationed in their kingdom, then they had to cede a part of their territory to the British as a penalty. They were not allowed to keep their army. They had to expel all foreigners except for the British from their area. They also had to take permission of the British before they could enter into any relationship with other states, and they had to maintain a British resident at their courts. The residents were political or commercial agents whose job was to serve and help the British. The policy of the subsidiary alliance was evolved by Lord Wellesley. According to this alliance, the rulers were to be protected by the company and had to maintain British forces within their kingdom at their own cost. If the ruler failed to make payments for the British army stationed in their kingdom, then they had to cede a part of their territory to the British as a penalty. They were not allowed to keep their army. They had to expel all foreigners except for the British from their area. They also had to take the permission of the British before they could enter into any relationship with other states, and they had to maintain a British resident at their courts. The residents were political or commercial agents whose job was to serve and help the British. It was through the residents that the British interfered in the internal affairs of the Indian states. Some of the princely states which entered into a subsidiary alliance were Hyderabad, Mysore, Cochin, Travancore, Awadh and Gwalior. The doctrine of lapse was a policy introduced by Lord Dalhousie, who was the Governor General from 1848 to 1856. According to this doctrine, if an Indian ruler died without a male heir, then his kingdom would lapse, that is, it would become part of the company's territory. The rights of the adopted children were not accepted. Satara, Sambhalpur, Udaipur, Nagpur and Jhansi were all annexed by this doctrine. Question 4. How was the army organized by the British? Answer. Colonial rule brought in new ideas of administration and reform. The army was an important instrument for defending, consolidating, and expanding British rule in India and the neighboring areas. It was the base on which the power of the company rested. The East India Company recruited a large number of Indian soldiers. The army came to be known as the Sepoy Army, from the Persian word sipahi, which means soldier. The company army was well trained and disciplined according to European military standards. They received good salaries regularly, which made recruiting easier. The highest rank that an Indian sepoy could rise to was that of a subedar. The higher posts were reserved for British officers. Last question, question 5. Write about the judicial administration set up in India by the British. Answer. The judicial system in India had no uniform code of law before the British. Steps were taken by Warren Hastings and Lord Cornwallis to institute a judicial system in India based on colonial standards. In 1772, a new system of justice was established. Each district was to have two courts, a Faujdari Adalat criminal court and Diwani Adalat civil court. The Maulvis and the Pandits interpreted Indian laws for the European district collectors who were in charge of civil courts. The criminal courts were under a Qazi, judge, and a Mufti, Muslim jurist, but were under the supervision of collectors. Under the Regulating Act of 1773, the Supreme Court was set up in Calcutta. An appeal court, or the Sadar Nizamat Adalat, was also set up there. Over a period of time, a hierarchy of courts were established. High courts were set up in Bombay, Madras, and Calcutta. At the lowest level were subordinate courts which were headed by Indian judges. Indians were not allowed to rise to higher positions in the judicial services also. In 1793, the Cornwallis Code introduced a code of law which reorganized the judiciary. The British introduced the concept of rule of law according to which everyone was equal before the law. The law was the same for everyone irrespective of age, class, caste, religion and economic status. However, this was not implemented as Europeans and Indians were tried in separate courts. Thanks for watching.